Limerick Writers Centre. Now, on behalf of the Writers Centre and Revival Press, I'm delighted to welcome you this afternoon to the Hunt Museum for the launch of Ron Carey's debut book of poetry. We at the Writers Centre are very, very grateful and thank Ron for his kind words about Limerick Writers Centre in his recent Arts interview on the Limerick Leader. Ron described the centre as being at the heart of literary Limerick life. So thank you, Ron. Well, most grateful to Hugh Maguire once again for allowing us to have a launch in this splendid room, this splendid building. Just before I continue, just to say about phones, wouldn't be the end of the world if your phone went off, but you'd probably be embarrassed. We're going to start by and ask the director of Limerick Writers Centre, Dominic Taylor, to come and say a few words.
Thanks, Donald. And thanks again to all of you for coming here to the Hunt Museum today to celebrate the publication of Ron's book, Distance. Ron now follows in the great tradition of other contemporary Limerick poets who began, I suppose, which began with our own Desmond O'Grady and the Castle poets in the 1950s and continues on today through the work of the Limerick Writers Centre and the White House poets. As publishers of Distance, I just want to set out the role of the Limerick Writers Centre. What we try to do is to bring ideas about books, literature and writing to as wide an audience as possible, and especially perhaps to people who do not feel comfortable in traditional arts, literature, venues or settings. Pablo Neruda, the Nobel Prize-winning poet, said a number of years ago that poetry is like bread, should be shared by all, by the vast, incredible, extraordinary family of humanity. And that, in a small way, is what we try to do. The book we are launching today is the 41st title the Limerick Writers Centre has published since 2008, under its community publishing initiative. Now, I'm sure a lot of you will know that increasingly more these days, for writers to get their work published is now nearly impossible, especially with the large publishers, who now control a significant amount of all books published in Europe and America. Basically, they are in control of what we read. At the Limerick Writers Centre, we share a belief that writing and publishing should be made both available and accessible to all. We try as much as possible to represent diverse voices and advocate for increased writing and publishing access to individuals and groups that have not typically had this access. We promote writing done by ordinary people, people who maybe are not trained writers and may struggle to get their ideas down on paper. We value their difference and we welcome people who may lack confidence in themselves and their writing ability. Through our readings, our workshops and our writers' groups, our aim is to spread a consciousness of literature. We encourage everyone to engage actively within the literary community. Through public performances, we bring together groups of people who value literature and provide them with a space for expression. We are, importantly, dedicated to printing short-run, high-quality produced titles that are accessible to all. We actively encourage writers, from the serious career-minded to people who write for pleasure, healing, personal growth, insight, or just to inform. And over the years, we have produced a broad range of writing, including poetry, history, memoir, and general prose. So on two counts, I'm delighted to see so many of you here today to support Ron's book. Firstly, it is great that Ron's work is now available, and as a Limerick-born poet, he will bring a positive awareness of Limerick to a national audience. And secondly, it is through the sale of books like Ron's that we can continue to reinvest and publish new writers. So when you buy Ron's book, you're not just supporting Ron, you're supporting other local writers also. So just to conclude, I'd like to thank again a number of people who helped make this occasion such a success. Thanks to Hugh Maguire and his staff, to Catherine Phil McCarthy, who's shortly going to launch the book, and to Jane Clark, who will launch the book in Dublin next week. And to my own colleagues in the Limerick Writers Centre, Donald Thurlow, Marion Cody, and Lot Bender, who did such a great job in designing the book. So thank you very much.
As Dominic said, we have Catherine Phil McCarthy here to launch the book. Catherine's a teacher and a poet. I could spend some time reading out the list of awards from 1990 onwards, but it would take me some time. I'll mention a couple. Way back in 1990, the winner of the National Women's poetry competition, right up to 2014, the Lawrence O'Shaughnessy Award for Poetry from the University of St. Thomas in St. Paul in Minnesota, and in between many, many others. Catherine was born in County Limerick and studied at University College Cork and Trinity College in Dublin. She received so many awards. A selection of her poetry is included in many, many poetry books. So it is with great pleasure I introduce Catherine Phil McCarthy to you.
It's a pleasure to be here, and I'd like to invite the people who are standing to come and sit in with us, if you just to make yourselves comfortable and to feel at home. I'm honoured to be invited to launch Ron Carey's first collection of Distance. It's lovely to see so many people here and to see so many people supporting the publication of this book. Thanks for coming out on this very sunny afternoon. I know that there are lots of other things people can do, but to be here for poetry is terrific. The production values are very high. It's an absolutely beautiful book. I just learned a few minutes ago that the photo on the cover is from a place known as the Featherbeds on the Dublin Mountains. And everything, you know, the fonts, the page numbering, the care, the detail the publishers have taken is really impressive. I've read with Ron on 3 occasions. The first time was in Bantry for the Fish Prize. I've just asked people to come on in again and sit down. Come on, there's several seats up here in front, so just feel welcome. Just make yourself at home. It's lovely that you're here. Thanks for coming. I've read with Ron on 3 occasions. The first time was at Bantry for the Fish Prize, as I just mentioned. The 2 of us were on the podium, along with Ken Taylor. And we've met. I think we've managed to meet almost every single year since, haven't we? The second time was shortly after that, when I read here at the Hunt Museum, and for Kushla, and Ron kindly agreed to read a poem or 2. And the third time was for the Simon community, I think a year ago. Since then, I've noticed that he's been published for many years and been discovered way back by none other than David Marcus, who published his poems in the New Irish Writing page of the Irish Press. And David Marcus is legendary. He was legendary, really, for his discovery of young talent. And also he was published by Terence de Vere White in the books pages of the Irish Times. First, that struck me is the title of the book. The word distance. It comes from the Latin dis and stare. The Latin prefix dis means apart or asunder or away, and stare is the infinitive of the verb to stand. So we're standing apart. And I think that's a very interesting reflection on what poets do, standing apart. The word can also have a reference to discord, dispute, or quarrel. And I think I was reminded, I think it was W.B. Yeats who said that of the quarrel with others we make drama, of the quarrel with ourselves we make poetry. And another possible reference to the title is remoteness, something suggested by the word. And all of these qualities are engaging and a source of curiosity. When I listened to Ron read from upstairs at the publication of the anthology for the Fish Prize, judged in 2010 by Matthew Sweeney, what struck me was the delicacy with which he handled the experience of turning into his father. The poem lends a new perspective to Sophocles' play Oedipus Rex. It is done with such precision, grace, and tenderness, at the same time revealing the eeriness and the psychic cost to the speaker in the poem, the young man who is the son. Not a thought, Elizabeth Bishop has said, but the mind thinking is what a poem captures. That poem demonstrates what art is about. It reveals a moment of transformation, of metamorphosis, where someone or something is turned into somebody else or something else. A son puts on his father's coat. It takes us to the place in Keats's Nightingale, where the speaker is transformed by listening to the singing of the bird. Away, away, for I will fly with thee, not charioted by Bacchus and his pards, but on the viewless wings of poesy. The French philosopher Gaston Bachelard, who has published The Poetics of Space, has said that poetry gives us back the situation of our dreams. It's something I've had to think about. Bachelard speaks about the house we grew up in, the one we carry around in us, the one we lived in first, but we end up carrying it around inside us. And in addition to the physical place, the memories and people that come with it. The first sequence of poems, Time Travel back to that first world. As Philip Gross has said of the collection, and I quote him, "For all the tender feelings vested in these poems, there's nothing sentimental here. These are the work of a poet, with an eye for the sharp, revealing detail, and no illusions about himself, the world, or other people. All the more moving, then, that he holds these scenes of memory, reportage, and imagination in such sure and subtle hand." The poem on the opposite page from Upstairs, titled Kilkee, is one of my favourite poems in the collection. It begins, "He was 6 years old when some American broke Aunt Lily's heart, and she took him down to the seaside of Kilkee." This is the conversational tone at the beginning, letting us into family secrets, a sense of intimacy. The day involved periwinkles, candy floss, and to cut a long story short, the boy is blown away, literally and metaphorically. There's a whimsical, surreal image of the boy airborne. Between the vibration of the Atlantic against the cliff, that apprehension of the infinite, the screaming seagulls and the high winds, he's lifted into the air only to find, quote, Aunt Lily is pulling him back to earth, holding his ankle in the jeweled grip of her hand. And we're only at the end of the first stanza and on the way to the fairground. In Seamus Heaney's collection, Fieldwork, there's a poem dedicated to a potter, Sonia Lanfear. I think it's called The Potter's Wheel. And in the poem, the potter's work is described as bringing down the sun. The image at the end of Kilkee and the imaginative leap takes us into the head of the child very immediately. He put his finger into the ring of the sun and pulled it down the sky until it entered the water with sharp, protesting shouts of light. Playfulness and humour, the personification of the sun, the shouts of light are what this poetry is about. The collection includes 4 sections: Time Travel, The Beloved, New Oceans, The World Will Break Your Heart. One of the things that struck me is the diversity of poems in the book and the technical achievement in handling poetic form. The second poem in the Beloved sequence is Greek Landscape with Swimming Boys. The poem is a beautiful reimagining of the Icarus myth. The boy who flies too close to the sun, falls into the sea and drowns. What's interesting here is that the poem begins where the story often ends, with the boy disappearing below the waves. How does one translate an ancient myth into a contemporary world? The reader is invited to travel with him. I drowned and went among the dead and rose again. Blonde young men carried me to the shore. There's a recognizable world of surfers who rescue the boy and of the weighty mystery that caused him to fall in the first place. In the islands, there's an imagining of John M. Singh coming to Inishmaan, and a quality of kind of magic realism in that poem with his watch and ticking clock, where they barely can tell one day from another, where every morning the women appear walking through nettles and maidenhair to the sea, lifting their madder-stained petticoats red with secrets, where the curraghs spin and dance in the wind. In several poems, there's an exploration of two worlds colliding, whether it's the electrification of rural Ireland or My Father Built England, or Clocking Out. There's the conflict between two different energies and perspectives. And as in the poem just quoted, that is often a source of magic and of vision. It's the quality that gives great strength to Ron Carey's work, and the handling of it is both deft and humorous. I'm not sure, Ron, if you're going to read from Clocking Out.
No,
Have you? I just wanted to, it's a poem towards the end. In Clocking Out, there's a fascination and an element of terror. And I'd like to finish by reading the opening of the poem. And what I'd like to say, just before the end, is that I hope Ron Carey will never allow himself to be silenced as a poet, and that his work receives the recognition and celebration that it deserves. And these are the first lines of Clocking Out. After the last day of work, he took the alarm clock from its perch on his side of the bed and brought it to the kitchen. He filled the sink with cold, stainless water and placed the clock at its edge. It wasn't easy to ignore 35 years of faithful service, but others had, and so could he. He set the alarm to on, twisted its arms until it screamed, and then, taking firm hold, he drowned it. It struggled for a time, sending off a panic of vibrations. At last, its powerful heart flooded. It stopped. And just to say again, I hope that Ron will never allow himself to be silenced as a poet, that his work will be recognised and celebrated. And playfulness and humour, the personification of the sun, the shouts of light, are what this poetry is all about. And I declare this book well and truly launched.
Dominic and I host a radio program about books every week, and Ron was our main guest yesterday. And while preparing for the interview, I looked at his website, and there was a wonderful piece on it which I really liked and amused me too. He said, I'd always written poetry, or verse, even as a very small boy. It impressed the hell out of my mum and dad. But as I grew older, this eccentricity didn't quite seem macho enough for most of my rugby-playing friends. But we're glad he continued to write poetry. The other quote that I got from his arts interview was, a person is a poet at heart, first, and only then a poet who writes poetry. Ladies and gentlemen, Ron Carey.
Smile, it says here. Thank you for your kind words, Catherine. Just really, it's really much. Catherine and I met 5 years ago in Bantry, and since then she's been a really good friend and a supporter of mine. I want to thank her for agreeing to launch the book. Catherine herself is a wonderful poet. Her latest book, The Invisible Threshold, is a terrific collection of poems that I absolutely recommend. Thank you, Catherine. Well, thank you all for coming. It's a great day for me to launch my first book, and I get to meet friends and family that I haven't seen in absolute donkey's years. I just recognised noses as I came in, the Noonans and the Careys and all the rest. And thanks all for coming, I really appreciate it. My collection is called Distance because I am interested in the relationship between people in time and space. In time because we are connected those who have already lived our lives and those who will follow us. And in space, because of changes that distance brings about. My mom died about a year ago, and she and my dad are as far away from us as it is possible to be. And yet even that terrific distance can be bridged by memory, which is why we always should hold on to our memories and keep them safe. My mom was a soda cake from Thomangate, and she was very proud of that. My father was born and raised in Parnell Street. My grandfather, William Carey, had a jeweller and watchmaker shop there for many years. We lived overhead that shop until 1952, where we then moved to the brand new estate of Ballinanty Bay. Although the distance between the city and Ballinanty is not very far, it changed the dynamics of their lives and our lives as children. They met new friends, we went to different schools. Paddy. My first poem is called Moving, and it's just about going from Parnell Street to Ballinanty. Moving. Joe Busoli sat on the cart beside my 4-year-old self, while my mother and father walked to the measured clip of his clocked horse. It must have been an easy pull. A few sticks of furniture, some bric-a-brac, and Auntie Babby's china with its caravan of animals. As we crossed Thomond Bridge, the city turned away from us and slipped into our evening dress. Single cars drone by, bumblebees in September. Then, coming to a hill, we saw the 1,000 boxes of the new estate and the house that was to be ours. Its emptiness, concrete. As we came down the unworn road, its black tar barely solid under the wheels, Joe put the reins into my electrified hands. In her eagerness, my mother ran ahead, keys flashing and 100-watt solace in her fist. The black eyes of the front room suddenly blazed. From its open window, a young girl called to us, our names ringing new in the darkness. And that Catherine likes good tea. For many years I thought there was some sort of law that if you were born in Limerick you had to go to Kilkee on holidays. That's why I was there in the late 1960s and I met the beautiful Cathy Redmond from Dublin. This is why we now have 4 incredible, kind and generous grown-up children and 7 beautiful grandchildren. 3 of them are here today. One of my earliest memories is of Kilkee and being a small boy going on a train there. And just read it, although Catherine seems to do. Kilkee. He was 6 years old when some American broke Aunt Lily's heart and she took him down to the seaside at Kilkee. As they stood on the brow of George's head, he felt the Atlantic thump the cliffs and the shock vibrate the ground under his crept soles. A spray of needles goosed his skin and washerwoman seagulls screamed over the side. The wind began to lift him into the air. He looked down. Aunt Lily was pulling him back to earth, holding his hand in the holding his ankle in the jeweled grip of her hand. At the fairground, he pretended not to see her, winking at the men to let him win. They ate candy floss and periwinkles, and then had lunch in the Bay View Hotel. He was sick. In the evening, his head in Aunt Lily's lap, they lay among the grey-haired dunes, listening for the whistle of the last train home. put his finger into the ring of the sun, pulled it down the sky until it entered the water with sharp, protesting shouts of light. I love the sea and the notion of islands. John Millington Synge came to the Aran Islands with no other intention but to observe their way of life. But as soon as we touch other lives, come close or interact in any way, we change things forever. The physical distance that Synge came from was Dublin, but he was also moving through time. The islands. Imagine yourself, John Millington Synge, come to this place with private watch and ticking clock where they barely can tell one day from another. Where every sunrise the women appear walking through nettles and maidenhair to the sea, lifting their madder-stained petticoats, red with silvers. Where the curraghs spin and dance in the wind, and the men often give themselves away to death. Imagine watching their slow fall from the roof of the sea down to the gardens of the deep, never learning to swim against fate. Imagine leaping sharp Jurassic fossils until your shoes, handmade in Dublin, are in tiny shreds, so that they cut you a pair of pancooties that need seeping overnight to regain their soft and clawing primeval agility. Imagine yourself on the beach, the stars 2 feet above your head banging together, the dark jumping towards you as if it had waited all day for you to come. Imagine yourself gone, far from here. Yet each night they wind up in your old room, watching the clock you left behind, slicing down the seconds, one by one. Now, I left Limerick when I was a very young man, but I have some wonderful memories of the people here. One of these was my Aunt Abby, Bridget Pierce, who's a kind and lovely lady, and whom I love very much. She was the grandmother of some of the people here today. This is a poem called Chicken, and you'll see why. My Aunt Babby wore a shawl, black as midnight in a country lane. It framed her face, eyes sharp as my mother's, and a nose that could have been Caesar's, but definitely belonged to the Newmans. Her legs were gone, and she used mine to round up the chickens condemned for Saturday market. No easy task when the floor is made of feathers, and you are 10, and half afraid of the slashing claw, but wanting to be a small part of a big adult thing like death. As she rubbed her necks, she would ask me stupid questions about school and homework, as if this killing were nothing, and their squawking souls wouldn't follow me home and haunt me forever. I have only an old sepia photograph of my grandfather Thomas doing it, and I never knew him, so I just tried to bridge the distance between us by imagination. I probably got it all wrong, but the Newmans will tell me afterwards. Background. knew my grandfather, Thomas Noonan, but I have set his 1930 sepia image as background on my computer screen. Tall and handsome in moustaches, he looks a fine grandfather, one you might pick from a line of grandfathers clocked against an antique wall. His brown tweeds pinned with medals of soft electric icons. He's wearing the kind of peak cap that means business, walking forever up William Street, on his way to kill a queue of animals for Matterson's and Sons, when some poor man's angry Carey of resin shoots him from a laneway. Lynch behind him, large hocks of ham swing in O'Dwyer's yellowed window. Gorgeous, fat legs, hair singed by the expert hands of some young one from Thomgate or Killeen. As I click a shortcut icon on his broad shoulders, I wonder what he kept in the dark rub of his pockets. A half-hunter with a bit of weight to it, a familiar to the hand, or thistle seeds for the singing prisoners in Christy Carey's shop at the top of Parkland Street. At one time, the only connection between families was a letter. These letters were few and far between, and when it came, it was regarded with reverence. The letter. Like a blind dentist, my mother searches in the red mouth of her purse, while our irregular postman waits at the door. "That's not necessary, Mrs. Carey," he says, stoically, but he doesn't move. His hands are blue, but not from the cold. In the sleety rain, the Christmas post is weeping ink. He places the letter from Hounslow precisely at the centre of their transaction, the loose head of the English Queen held only by a single artery of gum. My mother ignores the generous wad of the envelope until she's pinched together the correct pennies of gratitude. She's finding it hard to concentrate, worrying that the expensive and delicate warmth of the house will escape and roll around outside. She keeps the door pulled against her back with the hook of her foot. When my mom could no longer make it up the stairs, we set about getting a stair lift. I saw then how much we take everything for granted and how we can be suddenly dependent on others. The next poem was inspired by those events. Upstairs. Lying on the bed with my mother, wearing my father's alpaca overcoat. Here, upstairs, where the air is old, and the blue painted radiators are singing, and the cold cream is liquefying on the dressing table, my mother can no longer take the cold. My father was my age when he died. I looked like him. Everyone says I looked so like him. Everyone says. I had to think when she asked me to wear the coat. For a moment I had to think about it like I didn't know what she meant. Because then she called me Danny. Too many times, Danny. Please, Danny, she said. So I put on the coat. She wants to lie down the pain for a moment, just for a moment, on the pink candlewick spread, upstairs where her body would not take her. So I lift her in my arms. So light. Oh, Sarah, you are so light. I carry her up to an age before one is old. Up where Sarah and Danny once moved in the fluid of young bodies and slept hot to the touch. We pretend to sleep, Danny and me, though I sweat in the coat and I don't feel well. but I stay still. For Sarah's sake, I am still. The afternoon seagulls are mad at something in the garden. I should investigate because they sound so near and real and mad, but I can't. Because she would not let go of his hand. After a while, released into the darkness, I get out. I see very little by the nibbling light of the Sacred Heart. Sarah, softly. Sarah, quietly. Sarah, my father's voice. And she says nothing, leaving me afraid that everything might be said, done, and said. She has taken all the cold of the earth into herself. Fathers and sons, you already had that judging look that boys of 7 or 8 require. You killed a bird, Daddy. In the streets of Kilkenny, a sparrow hung from the mouth of our car. I removed its tiny body. I'm sorry, I said. This wasn't the memory I wanted for you. This was a day to show you my work, to look inside that box of sharpened knives. In the engineering shop, your face blazed in wonder, row and row of huge machines, motors roaring, chained by electric cables. While the machinists showed off their skills, the boss waded across a river of noise. We crashed out into the sunshine, and you laughed at the surprise of silence. For lunch, we went brazenly to McDonald's. Don't tell your mother, we're dead. Our drive home was all smiles. You ran to your mother at the door. Mommy, Daddy killed a bird, he said. Genuinely, I'm really, really appreciative of everybody turning out here. It's really a great day for me. And that's it. I'd just like to thank you all. Thanks to Catherine for pushing the boat out. I'd like to thank the Hunt for all their help with the launch, Dominic Taylor of Revival for recognising my genius, and for being the very soul of patience. I would like to thank my brother Greg and his wife Ollie for their support over the years. I'm getting everybody in. My brother Liam for all the PR and being my advanced man in Limerick. I'd like to thank my own family, Jane and Rachel, for their support, David and Anna for their help with the images, invites, posters, for the book, and Kathy for just about everything. Thank you very much.
I'd like to echo Catherine's words. I'm sure we will see, and hopefully see more of Ron's poetry. The quote I made at the beginning, a person is a poet at heart first, and only then a poet who writes poetry. Ron's just demonstrated that. Thank you very much, Ron. Well done.